about a fixed axis. In that case, we obtain how to figure out the velocity of any point of the body. Just getting a bit slow. You've seen that when some body is rotating about a fixed axis, for example, in that case, you can obtain the velocity of a point of the body between the cross product rather of omega and r vector, where omega vector is the angular velocity and r vector is the position vector of the point relative to certain origin which is lying on the axis itself. Magnitude wise, it boils down to finding the multiplying the angular speed with the distance from the axis actually, isn't it? Magnitude or the speed is nothing but just the speed of point of the body. Let us try this velocity or the speed and obtain the kinetic energy when a body is undergoing rotation. Suppose, for example, we consider the rigid body and look at the, say, for example, this object is undergoing rotation about this axis with angular speed of omega. We're interested in finding out in this case the kinetic energy of rotation. For that case, I will have to just add up the kinetic energy of the individual point objects which make up this body. I could write on, in this case, assuming that this is made up of discrete point particles, I can write down the kinetic energy of rotation, let's call it Kr, as summation of the individual kinetic energies. So I get half into mi into vi square, summation over I. I in this case is index over which the summation varies. Depending on the number of particles, and I simply add up the kinetic energies of the individual point particles. Okay, now in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down this case Vi as half is just a constant, pull it out to summation, and Vi I write down as omega into the distance from the axis. So I'm going to now in this case denote the distance from the axis of the ith point particle as Ri. For example, this may be R1, then we may have R2, R3. This time I'm denoting with R, by R, the perpendicular distance actually. No, not the origin. In this case, the distance is from the axis. R vector was representing the vector with respect to the origin, which was on the axis, but this cross product boils down to what? Angular speed multiplied with distance from the axis. So the distance, this one, I'm denoting the quantity by Ri. Okay. Just slight change in notation. Earlier it was R vector was from this R vector is from the origin of this origin was lying on the origin, say on this axis itself. This R is that position vector, but right now the R I am writing down is the distance from the axis actually. So I'm going to write down this one as this. Ri represents the distance from the origin actually. Okay. So this transforms to I'll just take this common and omega a square, keep it separate. Omega is a constant, same for each particle. So I pull it out of the summation actually to end up getting half into summation of mi into ri square into omega square. This this summation that we have, that is the summation of the mass of the ith point particle multiplied by distance squared. That is referred to as a moment of inertia of the body with respect to the given axis, where you get this. Is a moment of inertia of the body, of the rigid body, about the given axis. About the axis, okay. This summation that we have, in this case again, remember that Ri represents the perpendicular distance from the axis, not from the origin actually, but from the axis, okay. I have denoted in this case by Ri the perpendicular distance from the axis. So this particular summation, where I multiply each point mass by the distance square from the axis and sum it up, is referred to as a moment of inertia, say, of the body about the axis. It's kind of inertia of rotation, or you can say it is pretty much like the linear inertia. Inertia usually characterize mass. In this case, the inertia is characterizing a kind of, you might say, analogous quantity to mass over there. Whatever is present in the non-rotational case as mass, in case of rotation, it's present or it can be seen like the moment of inertia. In general, bodies having higher moment of inertia will be difficult to keep going, difficult to rotate, for example, starting from rest, compared to something which has a lighter, lesser moment of inertia. The moment of inertia does not only depend on mass, however. You notice that it will depend on also the distribution of mass actually about the axis. So we might have the same mass but different distribution, in which case the moment of inertia will be different actually. This one that we have become the, by the definition we see that's a summation. This is actually additive in nature. The moment of inertia about a given axis. Notation of no. Just I make sure, or I just clarified what Ri was representing. I just clarified in the diagram also. I've shown Ri this time represents the distance from the origin. I could have chosen another symbol, but I chose to stay with this because usually it is written down as Ri. But in the understanding, this Ri is actually distance from the axis. Originally, what I did was I took R vector, the usual notation for position vector, R vector, as a vector which was from the origin of the coordinate origin with respect to origin. The position vector was I denoted as R vector actually, but you notice that then we had a vector omega cross R. Okay. Right now in this case, it is simply a multiplication, not a cross product. Last time I actually wrote down omega cross R vector, isn't it? But this time I'm simply saying omega into the distance from the axis. That is what boils down to. We saw that omega cross R vector was actually giving us simply modulus omega multiplied by the distance from the axis. That was the magnitude actually. This is what we have. So V, just notation actually. I will say V is the speed, not the. I mean, in this case, not the velocity actually. And secondly, omega remains the same for all the bodies, or all the points actually of the body. Ri is different, but omega is the same. Last time also I said that omega cross r was representing the velocity of point, a point, not the entire body. It just was the velocity of a certain point whose position vector was r with respect to the origin. Okay, that's what I said actually. I also said that magnitude wise, it is boiling down to nothing but the angular speed multiplied by distance from the axis. I was in fact saying that points farther away from the axis, they're going to move faster. The reason was quite simple because they're farther away from the from the axis, so they'll move in a bigger circle, and that is at the same time. In fact, that is why the speed have to be more. In fact, and anyway, what also I say is this is a summation I've written down, but we can obviously, if the body is taken to be a continuum, or we can just treat the body as a continuous object, then this summation will be replaced by an integral. I will say that it has to be written down over the entire object. Summation of r square into dm. In this case, what I'm assuming that we have some object, this tiny volume that we have over there, this elementary mass I consider a tiny mass. Distance is r. This one is dm. Dm represents the elementary mass present in the body. Multiply. I'm basically treat that dm as a point mass. Obtain the moment of inertia, that point mass about the axis, and then add the moments of inertia contribution because of all such point mass, and add them up. They'll boil down nothing to but boil down to simply the, let's say, integral actually. The summation will give rise to integral in this case because we are adding continuum or continuous objects, continuous quantities, that becomes an integral. Okay. Same thing as summation in case of continuous. Discrete, we have to have sum. For such continuous, we'll have to perform an integral over there. Okay. But the important thing that you must keep in mind regarding moments of inertia is that it is additive about the same axis, which implies we can always add the moments of inertia of two objects about the same axis, and we can get a total moment of inertia for the combined body actually. Okay. As I was saying, the moment of inertia not only depends on the mass but also the distribution. We can obviously have the same mass but different moment of inertia when the mass is distributed in a different fashion actually. Okay. So let's spend some time regarding this moment of inertia. First of all, the SI unit is going to be kg meters square, but obvious. You also notice in this case that if it happens that all the mass of the body is concentrated at the same distance from the axis, I mean, if it's happening in such a way that the mass distribution is such that all mass is located at the same distance from the axis, in that case, the result becomes rather simple. An example is, for example, the ring. If you take up a ring or a hollow cylinder for that matter, and we try to look at the moment of inertia about the central axis of the body, you notice that for a ring or a hollow cylinder, we take up a ring like this. And this is the axis. And notice in this case that for this such kind of a ring or like a hollow cylinder actually, cylindrical shell, all the point mass which make up the body lie at the same distance from the axis, that is nothing but the radius. And that implies, if I just apply the summation over there, this Ri will be the same. This Ri, if I take radius in this case as R, I notice in this case that for this summation or integral, whatever you can call it as, I can always view this ring as made of point particles. But in this case, we end up getting that R square, R is the same for all point particles. So I can just take it out to summation. That will be pulled out of summation to give us summation of Mi into R square. So that is nothing but total mass. So I get in this case mR square. So for a ring, for instance, or a hollow cylinder, the moment of inertia is nothing but mR square. In fact, whenever it happens that the mass is located at the same distance from the axis, the moment of inertia will be mR square. It is mR square for a ring about its central axis, or for a cylinder, for example, or for instance, if I take up a rod, like I just take a rod over here and place it at a distance r from the axis like this, it will also give rise in this case to so on this particular axis, the moment of inertia will be also the same mR square. Okay, because all the point mass making of this rod, they are located at the same distance from the axis, which is equal to capital R. So moment of inertia will be once again mR square. Okay. In general, calculation of moment of inertia will require, in most cases, with integral, because most of the bodies that we're dealing with, they will be, say, continuum. Like we have a ring, we have a disc, we have a solid cylinder, we have a rod, and so on. As a result of which, the computation will require, in most cases, an integral to perform. But before looking at the computations over there, actually there are two theorems, okay, two results, which actually are theorems, and they usually simplify the calculation of moments of inertia by making use of those results. Just look at them, and then you can just look at calculations of certain moments of inertia. Always remember that moment of inertia always depend on the axis. If we change the axis, the moments will change actually. Okay. There are two results. One of them is called the parallel axis theorem. The parallel axis theorem states that if I needed to look at the moment of inertia of a rigid body about a certain axis, which is not passing through the center of mass axis, center of mass. So for example, we have this axis, x prime, and the body is over there. The idea in this case is to first consider the moment of inertia of this object about an axis that is parallel to the given axis and passing through the center of mass. If I consider the center of mass over here and draw an axis which is passing through the center of mass and parallel to the given axis. In that case, these are supposed to be parallel over there, the distance being equal to d. Total mass is m, for instance. In that case, the result says that the moment of inertia about that axis xx prime, that is going to be nothing but the moment of inertia about the center of mass axis. Let's call this IC. IC represents the center of mass axis parallel to the given one, plus m into d square. That is in this case the parallel axis theorem. It is basically saying that in order to obtain the moment of inertia about a certain axis of the body, we can first take up an axis that passes through the center of mass of the body and then find the moment of inertia about that axis. And then we can think of the entire mass to be concentrated at one point, the center of mass, and obtain the moment of inertia of that point particle. If I replace everything with a point mass over there, the moment of inertia for this axis becomes m into d square. So that we can finally add the two to end up getting the moment of inertia about the given axis. Okay. In fact, we shall say this as a very common technique in doing most, doing most things in rotation mechanics. We shall often consider the quantities as summation of two things. One is the moment of inertia, quantity associated with the motion of moment of inertia, and the other one is the motion about the, associated with the center of mass motion. Actually, I was saying that we can always divide the motion or the properties into sum of two things. One will be the property of the center of mass, and the other one will be property about the center of mass axis. Actually, it is in line with the same thing. I'm just first finding the moment of inertia about the center of mass axis, and then concentrating the entire mass right to center of mass and obtaining the moment of inertia of that point particle. That is why we have m into d square. Okay, that is the parallel axis theorem. The proof for the moment we don't require. I can just take. The second one is the perpendicular axis theorem. The perpendicular axis theorem is only true for laminar objects or thin sheet-like objects actually. What the result says, the perpendicular axis theorem, if I consider is applicable for thin sheet-like objects. If I take up, say, for example, a laminar object over there, a sheet-like structure, some point over here O, through which I have, let's say, there are three axes mutually perpendicular that pass through the point O. X and Y axis are lying on the plane, while Z axis is perpendicular to the plane of the object. Then the result says that the moment of inertia about the Z axis, that is the perpendicular axis of the perpendicular to the plane actually, is a summation of the moments of inertia about the X and the Y axis. That's relatively straightforward to prove, because if I look at the moment of inertia about the X axis of this body, we're containing mi into xi square, about the X axis if I consider for a point mass lying on this particular plane, what will be mattering then is the distance from the X axis, which is the Y coordinate actually. If I look at Ix over there, Ix in this case is summation of mi into yi square, because for finding the moment of inertia over the X axis, we'll have to do the distance from the X axis, which is going to be the Y coordinate actually. And then similarly, Iy will be summation over the X coordinates over there. If I consider the summation of Ix and Iy, it turns out to be summation of mi into xi square plus yi square. However, yi in this case is, this x square plus y square is by the Pythagoras theorem, distance from the axis these two are numbers. This one is y coordinate and this one is x coordinate. So if I just look at this summation these two, I am getting in this case the distance from the z axis squared actually. This can be written down as summation of mi into ri square, where ri now is the distance from the z axis actually. For any point, ri represents distance from the z axis, and that is why we end up getting the moment of inertia about the z axis. Yeah. This becomes the perpendicularities theorem. It actually is applicable for planar object, sheet-like object. But nevertheless, a useful result. I can just figure out in many cases the moments of inertia of objects by applying this result. Okay. Now, apart from this result, some these theorems actually, some of the results that we have for the moments of inertia that we can obtain in most cases by simply performing an integral. For example, if I consider the calculation of moment of inertia of a thin rod, for instance, come back to these two results. So while we are dealing with these things and apply them.
So,
Yes.
so wait a bit.
Oh, I have a diagram. That would have been okay. Should
Yes,
wait for
sir.
it. Well, I talked about the kinetic energy, but that was the beginning basically. Look at the kinetic energy of the body which is undergoing rotation, and that gave that there we actually come with the moment of inertia automatically. So the kinetic energy was a starting point for this thing. Most of the time, calculations of moment of inertia will require integration. So it's more like a exercise in integrals actually. If we just try to calculate the moments of inertia of some complicated body about a given axis, but in many cases, things will become simpler. In fact, most of the time we should be talking about symmetrical objects, bodies which are relatively symmetrical and homogeneous. In fact, for them, calculations are more or less straightforward, except for a couple of them over there. At least if I look at a rod about an axis, for example, say that the rod has a mass of m and the length is L, and we take up an axis like this. The axis is passing through one of the end and perpendicular to the rod. If I consider in this case the calculation, we'll have to think of this as a collection of point masses. Uh, what I can do is I can start by taking a certain element on the rod, which is at a distance x from the axis and having a length which is equal to dx. Dx implies in this case again a length which is differential, very very small. It's such a small length that you can treat it almost like a point mass actually. If I consider the mass of this element dx, that will be nothing but m by L into dx. So for this point particle, this point mass, the moment of inertia becomes the mass into x square. This is for this point mass. I have to add up the contribution of such point masses all in the rod, which implies it will be nothing but summation of this quantity as x varies from 0 to L. You can therefore write down this one as 0 to L of the entire quantity, and that will be the moment of inertia in this case. If I just m by L is just constant comes out, what remains is the integral of x square, that is nothing but x cubed by 3. So you plug the limits from 0 to L, I end up getting L cubed by 3 actually. So So you get 1/3 of ml square. That is the moment of inertia, therefore, of the rod about an end or about an axis that passes through the end of the body and is perpendicular to the rod actually. Just 1/3 ml square. But what about if the axis was passing right to the center of the rod? We can perform the obtain the moment of inertia of a central axis.
So not well.
Exactly, either by direct evaluation or integral, or alternately, we can utilize a parallel axis or rather the additivity of this moment of inertia. If the axis is passing through the middle, the moment of inertia is passing, ms square 12 is required result, which I can see slightly indirectly. Tilavrata, you have raised your hand. What happened? Just got fine. What I could have done in this case is instead of direct evaluation, we can use the additivity of this moment of inertia over the given axis. I said that moments of inertia can be added up about the same axis actually. So instead of viewing this as a rod whose mass is m and the length is l, let us view this as a combination of two rods actually. If I had, think of this as made of two rods, one of them is m/2 and l/2. That's one of the rods. And the other one is this part, which is again m/2 and l/2. You can think of in this case that this rod is actually made of two halves, one or two rods actually. One of them is basically m/2 mass and l/2 length. The other one the same. You notice in this case that we have then the axis passing through the end of each of the rods actually. This axis can be thought of as an axis passing through the end of the first rod, the right side, and similarly end of the rod which is on the left side actually, which is therefore can be added up by applying the previous result. So we end up getting in this case the sum of the moment of inertia of this one and this one, because you can always add up the moments of inertia about a given axis. This will become therefore double up because it will be same for both the rods. They're identical in both the rods, and the axis passes through the end actually, which implies in this case that we could add over here the moments of inertia, and so we end up getting twice of 1/3 into m/2 into l/2 square. So apply 1/3 ml square, but I just in this case use the mass as m/2 and the length as l/2. Okay, that will give us in this case 1/12 ml square. That is what we have. So 1/12 ml square becomes the moment of inertia of these two rods, or rather the rod of mass m, length l, and the axis passing through the center of the rod perpendicular to it. Okay, you notice in this case that even if the rod was bent, for instance, if I consider a bent rod like this, the axis is basically coming out of the plane over there. Both the total mass is m, the total length is l. What? ml square by 12 plus 1 plus m/16. Shubham, what is that? How do you get this result? And what is m/16 in this case? And there are two rods. There are two rods in this case, but each has mass m/2, length l/2 actually.
Repeat the question.
What? The question?
No, repeat the question once.
There's no question. I was just saying that even if I had a bent rod, if I just bend the rod, originally the rod has mass m, length L, so I just bend it about a middle by some angle like this. This is representing the axis coming out of the plane actually. So in this case, again the same result will be there because the total mass is even if you Shivam take one, I mean say m and L, but in that case, how are you getting 1 plus m by 16? That is dimensionally incorrect. M is a mass, so m by 16 is a mass, and 1 is just a dimensionless number, so you cannot add them like that.
Same only will come. 1 by 2 ml square.
Yeah, it will be the same thing. Okay, in this case, for example, it will be coming out the same thing over there. It was just the original rod which is bent about the middle, uh, at the middle by some angle actually. So it will give rise to something like this.
But the
And
axis is different.
the axis will be,
So axis will be here z axis.
yeah, it's perpendicular. So the axis is perpendicular to the plane actually. Moment. The axis is perpendicular to the plane, in fact, coming out of the port, in fact. So that axis I'm talking about. If I change the axis, then definitely things will be different, right? I was just emphasizing the fact that the moment of inertia is additive in nature, so you can always add the moments of inertia of two bodies about the same axis, as if you can just, I mean, say, but it must be about same axis that you can add. You can't add moment of inertia about two different axes for two bodies over there. Okay. If I consider, for example, a collection of rods, say for example, we have three rods and they are welded at their middle. Get a structure like this. What I've done is taken in this case three rods, each having mass m and length L. Three rods, each of mass m and length L. They've been welded at the centers, keeping them mutually perpendicular. Okay, so that's incorrect. So we need to figure the moment of inertia about an axis which is passing through the end of this rod and perpendicular to that one, but parallel to the another one actually. This is the axis. This axis is effectively passing through the end of one of the rods, is parallel to that particular rod, and I mean, perpendicular to this one, parallel to that one actually. Okay. In this case, what will be the moment of inertia of this object? I said we have three rods, each of mass m, length L. They have been welded at their centers, keeping them mutually perpendicular. What was the moment of inertia of an axis that passes through the end of one of the rods is parallel to one and perpendicular to the other two? In this case, this is, you can think, okay, fine, if this is the x axis, that is the y, and this z axis, then the other way around. X, this is y, and that is z. So it's parallel to the y axis actually. What will the moment of inertia in this case? Can you calculate it out? The moment of inertia of this object about the given axis, xx prime, which is parallel to the middle rod, one of the rods, and perpendicular to the other two. passing to the end of one of the rods. How much will be the moment of inertia for this object? It's just a collection of made of rods.
So 1 by 2 mm square.
How much?
1 by 2 mm square.
1 by 2.
Yes, sir.
No, it is not. Anything else? You can use the fact that moment of inertia is additive in nature. You can add the individual moments of inertia of each of the rod. So find the moment of inertia of each rod about this axis and then add them up. We'll have to apply the parallel axis theorem in this case. Add up individually and add up the moments of inertia of the individual rods. ML, no, Rishabh, that is not correct. It is not 1/3 ml square. Okay, waiting. No, Vrita, it's not ml square. Five by 3, no. 5 by 12, no. 7 by 12, no. So far, none of them. Yes, 11 by 12 ml square is correct actually. It will be in fact ml square by 12, 11 times ml square by 12 actually. That is correct. 11 by 12 ml square is the required answer. As I said, in this case, we can obtain the moment of inertia by adding the individual moment of inertia. Say we have that is rod number 1, that's rod number 2, and that is 3. For the first rod is quite easy because for the first rod, the axis is at the end perpendicular to the rod. It will be nothing but 1 by 3 ml square, isn't it? So at least that much is straightforward. We get 1 by 3 ml square so far for rod number 1. If I look at rod number 2, this one, what about that? Rod number 2, if I consider for that second rod, what will the moment of inertia over this axis? You notice that in this case, each point of the rod, the second one, They are the same distance. Yes, okay. For second rod, if I consider, I find that this rod is parallel to xx prime. Each of exactly L by 2 is the distance from the axis of the second rod, in fact, which is same for all points, which implies we could write down in this case m into L by 2 whole square. I'm just using the fact because total all the point ones that are located the same distance L by 2. Moment difference is nothing but ml square, m into L by 2 whole square actually. For the third rod, this one. For that case, I notice that this is a bit different compared to the other two. You notice that the axis is actually located a bit farther away, isn't it? So I'm going to apply the parallel axis theorem actually about this for this third rod. In fact, what I do is I first take up an axis that is passing through the center of the rod. The center of the rod in this case is right over there. I take an axis which is parallel to this one, which in this case is coincident with the second rod itself. So I just take up an axis that passes through the center of this third rod, parallel to xx prime, which is this red line, which is coincident with the second rod actually. So moment of inertia of the third rod about this axis will be simply ml square by 12 because this axis is at the end, sorry, is at the middle and perpendicular to the rod. To apply the parallel axis theorem for this one, I'll have to write down 1 by 12 ml square, first of all, plus total mass of the third rod, write it over here m into L by 2 square. So what I'm doing is I'm applying the parallel axis theorem for the third rod because the axis is actually not, say passing through any point of the rod. It's actually parallel to the rod, a given distance away. So I just consider it is not parallel, but say it's not exactly say on the say it's just farther from the rod actually. So we first write on the moment of inertia about the central axis. For the third rod, that axis passes right through the second rod actually. So first about that axis, it will become ml square by 12 because the middle, and then we add or we just concentrate the full mass of this rod as a point mass is center and calculate the moment of inertia of that point mass about this axis. So that will become m into L by 2 whole square. Okay. So if I just simplify this entire thing, I see that we have 1 by 3, then this becomes 1 by 4, we have 1 by 12 and 1 by 4. 1 by 3 plus 1 by 4 plus 1 by 4 plus 1 by 12 we already have. That makes it 4 by 12 plus 6 by 12 plus 1 by 12, that makes 11 by 12, exactly. So you get in this case 11 by 12 moment ml square as a moment of inertia. Slightly less than ml square actually. Okay, fine. Usually, if I consider other bodies, other objects like, for example, a ring, we know we have the moment of inertia of a ring as mr square only. So we just, you notice one more thing by the way, in this moments of inertia, okay, first of all, let's write down. For example, if I have a disk, if I consider disk about the central axis, the answer will be what? Mass m radius r. The moment of inertia will be, in this case, turns out to be m r square by 2. That can be easily evaluated, but it will require a bit of integration. The idea is to just, m r square by 2 is what we have. We just look at the disk and divide them into rings which are concentric to the center, and then find out the moment of inertia of those rings, add them up, will give rise to, in this case, m r square by 2 actually. That is the moment of inertia. In fact, even if I take up a solid cylinder, for a solid cylinder having solid cylinder, that becomes half a mass square again. Assuming the mass to be m, the radius to be r. It is pretty much same as that of a disk actually. Yep. In fact, any dimension that is parallel to the axis does not appear into picture actually. If I take up in this case this axis, the dimension which is parallel to the axis, the length of the cylinder, that will not appear in the answer for the moment of inertia. That's always correct actually. Okay. Symmetrical bodies, if I take up the dimension along the axis, it will be not present in the moment of inertia. Okay. Obviously, if it was a hollow cylinder, like a cylindrical shell, it will be same as that of a ring, because then again all the mass will be located at the same distance of the from the axis. So the result will be turning out then to be half mass square again. Okay. If I consider, for example, a rectangular plate, if I take up,
Sir,
yes,
sir, for hollow cylinder, it will be MR square, no?
for a hollow cylinder,
Yes, sir.
yes, that'll be a mass square. Same as a ring actually. Whenever it happens that all the mass is located at the same distance from the axis, it's always m into distance square. Okay. We take up a rectangular plate whose lengths are A and B. We take up the axis, which is passing, on the plane of the rectangle, passing through the center, middle of the rectangle. In this case, it will be same as that of a rod whose length is B. This, length is A. Actually, this dimension does appear. This is what we have. We can actually think of like made of a lot of rods. I can chop it up into a lot of such rods like this, parallel to each other, and then add up the one difference of all those rods. So in effect, we end up getting in this case 1 by 12 into ma square actually. Because for each of the rods, I get 1 by 12 into mass of that rod into the length square. Length is nothing but a in that case, which is remaining constant. So when I add up the moments of inertia, I'll basically add up the total mass. And that is why we get in this case moment of inertia as 1 by 12 into ma square. Similarly, if the axis was like this one, I'd have got 1 by 12 into m into b square actually. You know? And what about the moment of inertia about central axis for this rod over this plate? If I had the same rectangular plate, but the moment of the axis was passing the same plate like this, but the axis was passing in this case in this fashion, so the center. What will be then the moment of inertia? That is A, that is B, the mass is M. But this axis, what will be the moment of inertia of this plate? The same rectangular plate that we have, but this time the axis passing through the center of the rod perpendicular. What you get?
So 1 by 12 into a square plus b square.
Yes, it will be 1 by 12 into ma square plus mb square. We just apply the perpendicular axis theorem. The perpendicular axis theorem will give us the required result. I consider two axes. One is this one, the other one is that one. This one axis is on the plane and through the parallel to this edge. The other one is parallel to the other edge. We have just calculated right now in this curve scene. Basically, 1 by 12 ma square is about this axis, and about this axis. This axis. This one over here is ma square by 12, and this one will have mb square by 12 actually, and that is why we can just add them up to end up getting the moment of inertia about the perpendicular axis, this one over there, which will be there for 1 by 12 times ma square plus mb square. which we have. Then if I consider a hollow spherical or sphere, supposed to be a spherical shell, then about any of diameters, moment of inertia about diameter will be nothing but how much in this case for a hollow sphere? Anybody? Anyone? Spherical shell. What will be the moment of inertia? About a diameter. Anybody have got the idea or what? Yeah. It will be 2 by 3 into mr square actually. Writing 3. But if it was solid sphere, it would have been then 2 by 5 mr square.
2/5.
Exactly. We can actually prove these results, but again said that will require some integration. So for the moment, I hold it, not proof for the moment. Later on, maybe I can do them as a proof or as exercise of integration. For a solid sphere about any of the diameters, we end up getting 2 by 5 mr square. But remember that this one is a diameter, about a diameter. Okay, it's not about a tangent, it's about a diameter. As we could see in this case, the moment of inertia of the hollow sphere is more to be expected because the mass is farther away from the axis in general. While for the solid one, the mass is also nearer to the axis, and that is why the moment of inertia becomes less. And what if I have, for example, disk, but the axis is like this one? Consider disk. This one, but the axis is like this one, that is the axis. Perpendicular the disk, the axis is lying on the plane of disk at a distance of r by 2. What about the moment of inertia about this axis? An axis which passes which is lying on the plane of disk and is passing along a chord at a distance of r by 2. How much will the moment of inertia about this axis for this disk? Can we figure it out? Moment of inertia about an axis that is at a distance r by 2 from the center lying on the plane of the disk. How much will the moment of inertia over there? Half a mass square. No. Half a mass square is already about the central axis. The axis, if it passes perpendicular to disk, in that case, it would have been half a mass. Is it coming out with half mass crystal? Let me see. Oh yes, it is actually turning out to be. You can apply the parallel axis theorem. Before that, perpendicular 1 by 4. Plus, yeah, that's fine actually. Sorry, yes, correct. It will be indeed half a mass square turning out to be. Yes, fine. It will be half a mass square. We first of all kind of consider an axis that is passing through the center of the disk parallel to the given axis. This is C, that is xx prime. I would like then the moment of inertia about that axis C through the CC prime, let's call it as. That is the axis which passes the center of mass. I mean, right now it is parallel axis theorem, but before that I must apply the perpendicular axis theorem actually. For a disk, if I consider about the axis that is a diameter, if I take up a disk about a diameter, for this case I can apply the perpendicular theorem. We notice that if this was a diameter, say x prime, if the moment of inertia is I about this axis, then quite obviously will be same about any other diameter. So about the perpendicular diameter as well, will be same moment of inertia I. So I can just add the moment of inertia about this axis and this axis to get 2I. But this must be the moment of inertia about the central axis, the perpendicular disk, which will be nothing but half a mass square. That gives us I equal to 1 by 4 mass square actually. That becomes the moment of inertia for disk about a diameter. You can use this result over there. So I can apply the parallel axis theorem to get Ixx prime equal to I about the CC prime axis plus the total mass of the disk at a distance of r by 2 from the axis. So I get this. That will give us in this case about the central axis 1 by 4 m r square, and this one becomes 1 by 4 m r square as well. It gives rise to half m r square. Yeah. Repeat. Yes. I was saying in this case that I'll first apply the perpendicular axis theorem to get the moment of inertia of a disk about a diameter. Now, obviously, the disk is symmetrical. About any diameter, the moment of inertia will be same. So, if I take the moment of inertia about this diameter as I, then about this diameter which is perpendicular to be also I. So, if I apply the perpendicular axis theorem, I have in this case the moment of inertia about the central axis equal to Ixx prime plus I about this axis, but they are the same. So I get 2I, and that should be equal to 1 by 2 m r square, because half m r square is about the perpendicular about an axis through the center perpendicular to the plane. So I equate them to get 1 by 4 m r square. Next, I utilize this result to find the moment of inertia by applying the parallel axis theorem. I have to determine it about xx prime. So I first take an axis CC prime passing through the center of the circle of a disk. About that axis becomes only 4 m r square. Then I just replace the entire disk by a point once of the center and distance from this one r by 2. So I get m into r by 2 whole square, which gives rise to m r square by 4 plus m r square 4, giving us half m r square over there. Okay. Yes. If we consider, say for instance, I mean the moment of inertia is additive actually. It actually implies that we can do it pretty much the same as if we have to subtract as well. I mean, for example, if I take up rectangle plate, this one is A, that is B, and we kind of remove a circular disc from the center, for example. Okay, just wait. I'll just make it a square over there. Take it a square. Then we have a square plate. From the square plate, a circular part has been removed. We're going to mask the remaining part. The mask of the remaining part. That is given to be m. What will the moment of inertia about an axis through the center of the square and the circle? They're concentric actually. They're concentric. So about this axis perpendicular to the plane of the picture. What is the moment of inertia? Yes. Before that, what about the moment of inertia of a square plate actually? You've got an axis to the center of the plate, perpendicular to it. What is the moment of inertia of a square plate? Side length A, mass M. The axis is through the center, perpendicular to the plate. What is the moment of
So
inertia?
1 by 6 m a square.
Okay.
1 by 6 m square.
ठीक है. We can use the result for rectangular plate. M square, m by 12 a square plus b square. Then you simply put a equal to b, both of them as a. So you get 1 by 6 m square actually. And that's fine. Now for this one, what about this one? In this case, you can imagine that this the plate was square, and then we have just cut a circular part from there. So obviously, the mass square of area remains the same. M is the mass of the remaining part actually. ma square by 96. 96. Interesting. Pi will not appear. M is the mass of the remaining part, Rahul. I don't think that pi should appear because we have a circle to be considered somewhere. Well, I may be wrong.
Yes, sir, pi is coming.
Huh.
Sir,
Hmm?
sir, what is the radius of that circle, a by 4 or a by 2?
Radius is a by 4
Okay, sir.
and it's concentric.
Sir,
Hmm.
sir, m a square into 256 plus 93 pi by 96 into 16.
That's great. I'll have to calculate it in case I do. Wait. Suppose in this case the mass per unit of area is taken as
Sir, 93 pi will.
let me see. I'm going to call the mass per unit area as sigma. The sigma is mass per unit area. The idea is what I mean say right now whatever is the moment of inertia, the axis is basically the axis is perpendicular to the plate and passing the this one is the axis perpendicular to the center. Okay. Now the point is what if I kind of fill this gap backwards? If I just fill the removed portion, in that case, that complete square will be formed actually, isn't it? Whose moment of inertia is known to us? I know the moment of inertia is additive. In fact, let's fill this gap. We just fill the gap over there. Fill the gap. In that case, it become a complete square. That moment of inertia would be 1 by 6 into the total mass into a square, isn't it? So then we shall have this. Then we get 1 by 6 into the mass becomes sigma into a square. Sigma into a square is total mass. Then if I just fill the gap and we get 1 by 6 ma square, so I get this. This is for the square. If I fill the gap completely, then this should have been, this should be coming up because then once I fill the gap, it becomes a complete square. I should have got, then I should get 1 by 6 ma square over there. But this should be also be same as the sum of the moment of inertia of the object, which I needed to find out, plus that of the circular plate about the central axis. If I, whatever I need, I do not know, so I just call it I, and to this I must add the moment of inertia of the circular plate, which is going to be nothing but half into mr square, but that m has to be the mass of that plate, so I get half into sigma into pi a by 4 square into a by 4 whole square. I'm just using in this case half into the mass into radius square. mass is sigma into a by 4 whole square, radius square is a by 4 whole square. Yeah. So this will give us in this case I to be 1 by 6 sigma a raised power 4 minus 1 by 2 into sigma pi a by 4 whole raised power 4. So I can just consider 1 by 2, or you can say 1 by 6 into sigma into a raised power 4 common, 1 minus, I have to have 6, I multiply and divide by 3. I get 3 into pi into 1 by 4, 4 raised power 4. And we also did the sigma in this case is mass of the remaining area. So that sigma can be also evaluated in terms of the area and the mass. Three pi by 2 raised power 8, which is 256. This is I, but then you have to replace sigma by the mass per area. Sigma is nothing but mass upon the remaining area. That is going to be in this case that of a square minus pi into a square by 16. So we just plug it back in this case, and therefore I get I equal to a square can be pulled out. I have in this case 1 by 6 into sigma is m by a square into 1 minus pi by 16 into a square into 1 minus 3 pi upon 256. So we end up ultimately 1 by 6 ma square into 1 minus 3 pi by 256 upon 1 minus pi by 16. That's what we have. Okay, I'm sending.
Sir,
Hmm?
sir, please explain this solution once again.
Okay, I said I was just retiring the additivity of the moment of inertia. What I did was I said that if I was saying that if I fill the removed portion, if I fill the removed part back over there, it will become a complete disk, a complete square plate, isn't it? If I fill the gap, in that case, it becomes a complete square plate. As a result of which, right now, if I assume the moment of inertia to be I, if I take the moment of inertia right now is capital I to the center over there, then to this, if I add up the moment of inertia to this disk, I should get the moment of inertia of the entire square plate, the full square plate. This is what I've done in this case. I, which is the moment of inertia of the actual object that I'm looking for, whatever it is I'm looking for, that is I. To this, I add the moment of inertia of this square plate, a circular plate. Now, I have taken sigma as a mass point of area. So, the mass of the removed portion is going
Sir?
to be, yes,
The sigma should be m by a square.
m was the mass of the remaining portion.
Oh,
So, I get then sigma, half into m r square is what I wanted for this disk. M is sigma into the area of this part, which is pi into radius a by 4 whole square. and then radius square, which is a by 4 whole square. That is what I have over there. And this plus I should give us a total square plate moment of inertia. I mean, that is nothing but 1 by 6 ma square. So m is again sigma into a square. So I get 1 by 6 ma square. I just do the calculations part, and that will give rise to this one. Okay.
Okay, sir, understood.
Okay, fine. I mean, let's today it will be all for now. You can just leave. Many people had already school started in Himshila, but they will also start.
Hemshila was postponed to 8 o'clock.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know this. Anyway, David is not going to start. So
So there are so many people in the group. So, but they are few people attend the class.
at least Thursday morning, there's a story. I think the timing is a bit of issue because it's already getting. Even I was